We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Monday, February 24th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and you're tuning in to News Generation. Joining us today is Cheska Dainho.
Happy Monday. It's the start of the week.
It's the start of the week. And Ki Kim.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. Monday is when we delve into pressing issues capturing the attention of young people here in Korea. And recently, South Korea was shaken by a tragic incident involving an elementary school student and a teacher, leading to nationwide discussions on mental health and safety in schools. Now, to give you the details, a few weeks ago, 7-year-old Kim Ha-neul was found with critical stab wounds in an audiovisual room at her school in Daejeon City. She was rushed to the hospital after being found, but was pronounced dead. The alleged perpetrator, a female teacher in her 40s, reportedly confessed to the stabbing, saying that she was planning to take her own life and the last student remaining in the classroom. The teacher, who underwent surgery due to stab wounds, which police say seemed to be self-inflicted, is currently recovering at the intensive care unit, likely delaying police's interrogation. And local media outlets have reported that the teacher had a history of depression since 2018 and had taken multiple leaves of absence. And just last December, she applied for another leave of absence but returned to work within weeks. And just 4 days before the stabbing, she showed aggressive behavior towards a colleague who asked her how she was doing. Now, this stabbing incident has led to swift action from lawmakers who are now working on the so-called Kim Ha-neul law. So what is this proposed law, Ki, and what's the latest in terms of the progress of this law?
Well, first of all, my deepest condolences to Ha-neul, of course. So the newly proposed, a so-called Kim Ha-neul law, is basically about making the legitimate mental status examination mandatory and among the teachers before and after appointed to be a teacher, especially for those who take a leave of absence due to the mental illness should pass a very strict standard to be able to stand before students again. Lawmakers came up with this idea because for Ha-neul's case, there was a definite suspicion and concerning behavior, yet there was no safety measures taken whatsoever to prevent this tragedy. And last week, the government and ruling People Power Party first discussed the idea of Kim Ha-neul law, and the Ministry of Education announced that they will intensify the screening process for certifying a teacher. Though latest news tells the opposition party and many group of teachers are concerned about hasty process of it, that they should be having a more careful approach. And in the case of the United States, many teachers were asking for help during the COVID, and there was administrative measures taken to check on their stress level. And Japan also checked the teachers' mental status every year.
Right, so this law is still under discussion within the political circle, and to provide a bit more detail about this law, it's going to conduct regular psychological evaluations from a teacher's appointment throughout his or her tenure, as Ki mentioned, and also the government is planning to establish a teacher health review committee with legal authority to recommend administrative leave or dismissal for teachers who are deemed unfit for duty. But once again, as Ki mentioned, some concerns have been raised over this law because it was advanced in a very short amount of time after this stabbing happened. So Cheska, I want to ask you, what are the main criticisms of this proposed legislation?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think one of the major concerns has to do with South Korea's current culture and perception on mental illness. Now, this was actually also something that actually crossed my mind, Eugene, when we discussed it during the news feed, when we reported on this incident. Because when incidents like these happened, I think it can give a negative connotation and a labeling to all the people who are suffering from mental disorder that may not reach out to these extreme cases. And once we have this label or a social perception levied on the people unfairly, then I think it can even cause more problems in which people try to hide or not get treated openly. And this can actually do the opposite of what we're trying to do by having these laws to protect not only them, but also those around them. So I think we have to be really careful in terms of helping and supporting people to get better and hopefully return to their job and not to ostracize them from the society, because that would be doing exactly the opposite of what we want to create, a society of more inclusiveness, openness, and a lot of healing.
Right, and this is the reason why many teachers are arguing that the focus should be on those who are showing serious signs of violent precursors, showing serious warning signs of violent behavior, not a heavy emphasis on mental health illness, because as you mentioned, this could stigmatize those who are struggling with mental health issues. So going back to our discussion, a key factor in this case is once again that the suspect had a history of mental health struggles. And in recent years, we've seen several violent crimes linked to individuals with mental health conditions here in Korea. And of course, we want to once again emphasize that having a mental illness does not equate to being dangerous, and we must avoid stigmatizing those who are struggling. But statistics indicate a rise in violent crimes committed by individuals with untreated mental health issues. So, Cheska, could you walk us through what data says about this?
Yeah, and usually you've explained it perfectly. I think it would be too rash and too dangerous to connect mental disorder with crime. However, untreated, extreme mental instability could lead to erratic and unpredictable behaviors. And when they are coupled with malicious intention, could lead to catastrophic consequences both for the people and others involved, just like the Kim Ha-neul case that we talked about. So if we take a look at the screen, in the last 2 years, we have seen an increase of criminals with mental disorders gradually over the years. And according to the Supreme Prosecutor's Office, criminals with mental illness have, about on average, 61% chance of repeating its offense, which is, I would say, about 17% higher than others without these mental conditions. And this is, I think, something more worth noting, because if they are released back into society without, proper rehabilitation, treatment, or proper restriction, the entire society is exposed to danger and is at risk. In fact, a number of arson, unprovoked random assault and violence in the last few years that happened here in South Korea have been tied back to people with serious mental disorders. And I just really want to emphasize that we shouldn't treat this issue as something foreign or unrelated just because we don't suffer from those conditions or we're not that extreme, because this is something that exposes all of us to danger and safety, and I think we must address it on the society level.
So preemptive and preventive measures are the key, which is the reason why a lot of people have been asking the authorities, why didn't they take preemptive measures when the teacher showed aggressive behavior before the stabbing incident?
Right. And I love how you phrase it as preemptive and preventive, because I think sometimes, especially in South Korea, it can be very difficult to preempt, especially given the social perception and the kind of situation that we're in. But so far, because of Kim Ha-neul law, I hope that this measure provides some sort of protection, not just for the others, but for the people who are suffering as well.
Right. Then we've mostly focused on the situation in Korea until now, but Kia, are other countries facing similar concerns as well?
Yes, other countries too are facing a severe concern regarding the crimes committed by the criminals with mental issues. In the case of a parricide, the case where a family member is killed, the cases in Korea are very similar to those in other countries. About 60 to 90% of the parricide offenders had mental problems. Most of them murdered their parents, especially their mothers, and they lived with their family under the same roof. And many of them had a drug issue, committing a crime after having a serious quarrel.
I see. Then how are other countries addressing this issue? We're going to take a look into that. So, Cheska, what measures are currently in place in other parts of the world?
Sure. In some countries, preventive measures are in place. For example, in Australia, the police may actually be dispatched if they do not take prescribed medication for their conditions. And in America, the court actually has legal force to hospitalize very severely ill patients who may pose threat to others and or themselves. In the UK and Japan, I also heard that such enforced hospitalization is also possible, but there are, in all of these situations, controversy or concern over just how far can the institution go without actually harming or violating individual rights and freedom. And the so-called, this is a minority versus majority case, in which how far can the society go to protect the majority, and how far can we reach out to the minority to enforce something that they might not be willing to do.
Definitely, but the preventive measures that you've mentioned, the common ground is that they are all aimed at preventing these crimes from happening once again. So prevention is indeed a key in tackling this issue, and the Kim Ha-neul law in Korea is one approach that lawmakers believe could help prevent such incidents from happening again. So to gain deeper insight now, we'll be speaking with a legal expert after this short break. We'll be right back.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
Welcome back. Joining us this Monday morning is Yoon Seok-chun, a partner at Peter and Kim Law Firm. Welcome, Mr. Yoon, to the show.
Morning.
Good morning. So we would first like to ask you, as an attorney, what are your thoughts on the Kim Ha-neul law, and do you believe it will be effective in practice? And what potential legal or social concerns do you see arising from it?
Yes, the measures proposed in the bills have already been summarized in the earlier part of the report, and there are some concerns about the practical effectiveness of those proposed measures. In fact, there are several such committees as proposed that are already established and operating, albeit not based on the statutes. Moreover, currently Article 44 of the Educational Officials Act already provides that a mentally ill teacher may be ordered to take a leave by the principal. Despite the power and authority already bestowed upon them, the principals historically felt uncomfortable and were reluctant to order a leave due to its impact on the teachers. The committee is expected to lessen the burden and lower the threshold for such decisions. That said, from the perspective of mentally ill teachers, there is a possibility that they may conceal their condition and even worse, refuse to take any consultation or treatment in order to avoid being forced to take a leave, which in some cases would mean losing their job. Another concern is whether the committee will be properly equipped to assess the situation properly. In the tragic case at hand, it has been reported that the doctor opined that she could return to work, and what mattered was not her depression, but precisely her propensity towards violence. It appears that this case may not be easily captured by the committee, as the test focuses on whether the teacher is mentally ill rather than they exhibit violent tendencies. Therefore, strengthening the procedure to immediately separate the teacher when there is a confirmed propensity towards violence, such as through actions or verbal threats, and ensuring they are assessed by professionals immediately should also be considered.
Mr. Yoon, I want to ask you a question about to what extent does a suspect's history of mental illness influence the court's verdict? Because as you saw in the statistics that we showed, there has been a steady increase of criminals related to mental disorder.
Yes, under Korean law, for a defendant to rely on the insanity defense, a two-step test is required. First, the mental illness must have affected the aggressor to the extent to they fail to recognize the situation, in other words, telling right from wrong, or make their own decisions, in other words, control their action. Mere existence or history of mental illness does not automatically lead to the application of the insanity defense. As the next step, when the insanity is so severe that the aggressor is not capable of recognizing the situation or making a decision, the crime is not punishable. When the insanity is not as severe as above, but still limited the aggressor's capability, the punishment may be reduced. Previously, the law mandated the punishment must be reduced in such cases. However, due to criticisms on the provision, one infamous example being so-called the Jodusun case, the law was amended in 2018 to grant the judge's discretion over whether to actually reduce penalties. Pursuant to this amended provision, the court did not reduce the penalty in the Bundang Seohyun Station case.
Thank you, Mr. Yoon, for your insight and helpful information. But in your opinion, what legal or systematic measures could help prevent crimes committed by individuals with a mental illness?
Yes, first, the insanity defense should not be allowed as an easy escape. In the past, there was a tendency, particularly in cases involving intoxicated offenders, for penalties to be reduced based on the insanity defense. This is significant because when the insanity defense is abused as a loophole, public backlash and criticism make it harder to protect individuals who genuinely require the legal protection. Second, we need to create an atmosphere where mental illness is not stigmatized, and a history of mental illness does not hinder a patient's participation in society. In seeking psychiatric consultation, if seeking psychiatric consultation is treated as taboo, They will only hide their condition, potentially worsening it until a few reach the point of committing crimes. Third, and most importantly, when there is an actual aggression or a signal thereof, as mentioned earlier, immediate action must be taken.
All right, Yoon Seok-chun, partner at Peter and Kim, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so we've talked about legislative responses with Mr. Yoon, but we're now going to expand our discussion and take a look at what more can be done. So ending off our episode today, how can we work towards, at the same time, lowering crime rates while also ensuring better mental health support for those who really need it?
I think largely there can be twofold. So personally, what we can do as individual is regarding social perception. Mr. Yoon also talked about it, and this is something that has been coming out a lot.
Right.
And currently in South Korea, social perception on mental disorder can be, I would say, very polarized.
Right, because if, for example, if someone says, I'm getting mental health, I'm getting like psychological counseling, still a lot of people like question it. And it's kind of stigmatized in some way.
And especially if you're, let's say, receiving medication or even going to like an actual psychiatric places, then I think the stigma or the concern actually heightens over what the problem is with that person. But this social perception really needs to change because without it, just like Mr. Yoon said, and just like what the bill, the concern about the bill, people would try to conceal it more, and that would actually create more problems instead of solving what we're facing right now. And the other part is maybe I'm being a little bit more idealistic on this side, but I would really want to see more federal and municipal intervention. By that, I mean, I think it's really important to provide protection, just like you said, and prevention. And there are some young children who are being raised perhaps in a child, in a household where the parents are not fit to raise them. And usually when you look at these criminal records, a lot of things happen in the household and the childhood development phase. So it would be really great that the society provides not just protection, but preemptive measures and hopefully the support and the social perception that it is okay to be raised in a household as such, or it is okay to have a certain condition. That we will find a way to treat you and get you back into society.
Right, so advocating for a perception-wise change and also measure-wise change.
Yes, please. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
And what do you suggest, Keith?
Well, I'll be honest here, right? I've also had depression and suffered from a panic attack, and I might have been a victim of this whole phenomenon or situation that's taking place in Korea, not in extreme extent, but at first I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. It's just didn't know how to handle it, and I was very afraid of it. And going to see a doctor was not even an option for me because, like Cheska mentioned, and everyone is thinking that because of the social perception that people might think I'm insane, right? So, but we, especially in Korea, must realize that this is like a broken arm. When you break your leg or break your arm, then you go to see a doctor and get treated and you get recovered.
It's like having a common cold. If you have symptoms, you should go and check out what's wrong with you.
So, maybe it was an occupational hazard that I had, but luckily I had someone to talk to and some guidance from people around me, and I'm completely fine now. And my family played a huge role. I remember what my late father once said, that even if the whole world turns back on you, I'll be by your side all the time. And that just made it, Now I have my son, I feel more responsible and responsibility and strong. So when anyone suffers from the mental issue, we should all know that's curable, and that the family plays a really important role, so family should be there for them.
Definitely. I think that it's very important to balance safety and support, so ensuring a safe environment for students while also ensuring that there is enough mental health support for those who really need it. And that's all for this episode of News Generation, but we will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Cheska Dainho.
Pleasure is always mine. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ki Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for starting your week with us, and we'll see you tomorrow here at the same time. We are News Generation.